Greetings and salutations. This video will get you up to speed on the new changes coming with the 2.2 Guin update for Stellaris. I'm going to focus on the free update and not the Megacorp DLC. If people want, I'll do a review on that if there is a demand for it. Just let me know in the comments. Now, a lot has changed with the 2.2 update for Stellaris. For a lot of people, both regular and returning players, the game now plays quite differently. The update is focused primarily on the economy. Now, the main change of the economy of Stellaris is the Planetary Rework. The tile-based planet management system is gone, and it's now replaced with districts, buildings, and jobs. Previously, buildings used to allow a single pop to work it to give you the benefits of the building. Now a building will create an available job, or many available jobs, and multiple pops can fill those jobs and work the building. This is a very important concept to understand. You can have plenty of buildings and plenty of available jobs, but if you don't have enough pops, the building won't function. Okay, so with the main principle here established, we'll just leave planets for a moment and talk resources. I'm doing this kind of easy into the system, and hopefully this is the best way to understand how it all fits together. Now 2.2 has reworked old resources and introduced several new ones. Let's go through them one by one. First, we have three basic resources: energy credits, minerals, and food. Energy credits is both the energy source and the main currency in Stellaris. Energy credits are used mostly as an upkeep for things. Almost anything you build, be it buildings, ships, star bases, and more, all require energy to function. They have an energy upkeep cost. Now, to produce energy, you need to build generator districts on planets, harvest energy from space with construction ships, or sell any other resource on the market. We'll get to that later. Minerals are the basic building block in Stellaris. They're used primarily to build districts, buildings, and research and mining stations to harvest resources in space. They are no longer required to build ships. Minerals are instead now used in a lot of jobs as a conversion resource. Minerals turn into other things, which we'll talk about later. Minerals can be produced by building mining districts on planets and harvesting minerals from space with construction ships. Food is needed to sustain and grow pops on planets. Every pop consumes some amount of food monthly. You just need to make sure you have enough to sustain everyone. If you have 1,000 food, you can boost a planet's growth instantly with a planet decision. So having more food does not mean pops grow faster anymore. Instead, you have to spend food to grow pops faster on an individual planet. Food can only be produced by building agriculture districts on planets, and with a few extra food buildings you can build a little bit later on in the game. Now, we're on to advanced resources. Consumer goods represent various gadgets and luxury items that keep pops happy. They're often required by pops that work more specialized jobs, such as research, and are also used to produce amenities for happiness. Now, consumer goods is the first resource we're going to talk about that isn't mined from space or produced in a district. Instead, it's primarily created in a building called a civilian industry. This building creates artisan jobs, and when pops work it, they convert minerals into consumer goods. So this is an advanced resource. It needs to be refined from another resource. Minerals are taken in, and consumer goods are put out. If you run out of minerals, your artisan pops will not be able to create consumer goods. Alloys is another advanced resource, primarily used to create military ships and build star bases. It's also used to maintain ships as a monthly upkeep, along with energy credits. Alloys can occasionally be found in deposits in space, but is primarily refined from minerals on planets in alloy foundry buildings. Alloy foundries create metallurgist jobs, and pops work the job to take in minerals and output alloys. Next along we have influence, which works pretty much as it usually does. Then we have unity, which is used for the same things as before, but it is produced a little bit differently. Unity is now produced by building a unity building, which in turn creates a job, and that job requires consumer goods to produce unity. So just like alloys requiring minerals, unity requires consumer goods to be converted. This is the first instance of a double conversion, minerals to consumer goods to unity. We'll touch on this again later. In a very similar fashion, research is handled in the same way. Of course, research can be acquired in deposits in space, but it can also be created in a research lab building on a planet. The research lab will create a research job, and the job will require consumer goods to convert into research points. Lastly, there's 7 special resources. There's volatile motes, exotic gases, rare crystals, living metal, Zro, dark matter, and nanites. It sounds like a lot. The first 3, motes, gases, and crystals, can be created on planets in different buildings. Each of them are refined from minerals, so nothing crazy. You just need the technology to produce them. Motes, gases, and crystals are often used to upgrade buildings. So let's say you have an alloy foundry that creates 2 jobs. An upgrade to the building may increase it to 5 jobs, but requires an upkeep of 1 monthly gas. Motes, gases, and crystals are also used in ship weaponry later on in the game. For instance, higher tier laser weapons require crystals, higher tier kinetic weapons require motes, and plasma and the like require gases. It sounds a little bit more complex than it actually is, but essentially, higher tier weaponry will require a tiny amount of special resources to build the ship. They are not required to upkeep the ship, just to build it. Living metal, Zro, dark matter, and nanites each have different applications, but in the interest of time, it isn't really important enough for this kind of starter guide. You'll figure it out pretty easily when you get the technology that allows you to use them. It is worth noting that you cannot create these resources on any planet. You have to find them or buy them on the market. Okay, so that's all the resources covered. For a quick recap, we have some basic resources and some advanced resources that require refinement. Almost all refinement comes from minerals, but Unity and research comes from consumer goods, which if you remember, is also refined from minerals. So that's about as complex as it gets. Nothing is ever refined more than twice, and most are just refined once. Now we'll go back to planets to understand how to build a functioning world and keep people happy. When looking at a planet, the first important thing is the districts. Districts are always the same: city, generator, mining, and food, but it's up to you to build them in different amounts. City create housing for more pops, generators create more energy jobs, mining creates mining jobs, and agriculture creates food jobs. This is a bit different if you're playing machines or hive minds, but for now we'll just stick to the basics. The amount of squares beneath a type of district is how many of that district you can build, have built, and is or isn't blocked. There's also a district limit in the bottom left, which is determined by the planet's size, so eventually you will run out of space. Below districts we have the planet features. Planet features are essentially unique tiles. These add a bit of flavor and lore to your planet that help determine what districts it gets and special resources it might contain. Hot Springs, for instance, allows for more generator districts. Submerged ore veins allow for more mineral districts, and so on. You never really have to look at this, but occasionally there will be something quite interesting in there, such as the Subterranean Contact Zone, which actually created a job position called Subterranean Liaison Officer, which produced better trade on the planet. So that's a cool effect of an actual job that came from a planetary feature that did not require a building or a district, so it's pretty cool. Next to the planet features is trade value. Trade comes from pops on the planet, from certain jobs and different global effects. It's a representation of the commerce taking place on the planet. Trade value is essentially energy credits. It's 1-to-1 converted for free. You just need to make sure trade value makes its way back to your capital planet. If it doesn't get back, then you lose the income, and we'll get to that later. Down below we have some summary information. The available remaining districts, the current amount of pops, the available pop jobs, the amount of amenities, the amount of available housing, and the amount of unemployment. This is great to see at a glance. Essentially, you want pops and jobs to be about 1-to-1, or maybe a few more jobs than pops with 0 unemployment. This means everyone is working, and the next pop grown will immediately get one of those available jobs. As long as amenities and housing are above 0, then people will be happy enough. The higher those numbers are, though, the happier they will get, as there's plenty of space and luxuries. The happiness, also known as pop approval, is reflected on the right-hand side, where we see the planet's stability and crime. Stability is the sum of all the effects of your planet. Low housing, low amenities, and high unemployment will cause low stability and crime. Low stability means pop output is lower, and high crime will cause crime events, further lowering stability. Essentially, it's a downward spiral where you'll start losing all of your production as crime rises and stability falls. Just above stability are the decisions. This is where you can encourage growth, stop growth, and enact all sorts of things like converting the world into a city planet if you have the Megacorp DLC, which is pretty fun to see. In the middle we have the buildings. For every 5 pops you have, you unlock another build slot, and the build slots are not limited by the planet size. Something rather interesting is if you build a lot of the same building, the planet will be classed as that building. For instance, a lot of alloy foundries class the world as a foundry world, given a bonus to refining. A lot of farms create an agri world with a bonus to food, so you're encouraged to kind of specialize your planets and have them depend on each other. As mentioned, buildings will create job positions, and POPs will automatically fill those jobs and work the buildings. Buildings can create practically everything, such as amenities, unity, research, consumer goods, housing, crime reduction, and modify existing things like farm production or refinement production itself. You can see a summary of all the building outputs and intakes down below. Remember, some buildings now require resources to turn into other ones, so if you don't balance your economy, you can run serious deficits. You can always replace or disable a building if there's an imbalance, but that can affect POP jobs and unemployment. Which brings us neatly to the POPs themselves. In the population tab, we can see all of the POPs working the building and districts. In 2.2, POPs are broken down into rulers, specialists, and workers, and then a kind of a subclass of workers is slaves, which is essentially their stratum or class. Rulers essentially work at the planetary capital building as executives and things of that nature. Specialists often work the factories for refining, and workers typically work the districts. These are auto-assigned, and the chain always moves from the bottom up if it can. So if you create a new alloy foundry, 2 new specialist jobs will be created, which means 2 workers will get promoted up to specialist. This is really important because if you have workers working mines and they make 10 minerals, and you build an alloy foundry, suddenly 2 workers are going to leave their mining jobs and work the alloy foundry instead. But remember, the alloy foundry costs minerals to make alloys, but you've just reduced the amount of workers making minerals by essentially allowing them to promote themselves. This is why it's good to have POPs and jobs at a 1-to-1 ratio, because you can destabilize yourself if you don't keep track of the chain. You can set priorities for job assignment, but it's very micro heavy, and I would just recommend planning 2 POPs ahead at all times. The last thing with jobs to cover is demotion. If you have a specialist working a factory and you destroy the factory, the POP will become unemployed, and they'll refuse to work a lower class job for about 3 years. So they do eventually acclimatize down the chain, but it does take a very long time, and unemployment produces crime in large numbers, so it's definitely to be avoided. Also, the jobs list can look a little mental later in the game, but essentially at the head of each stratum category, it shows you what's been taken in on the left and output on the right. You'll notice that specialists are the only class that actually refine things, so if you ever want to see what resources are being used up by what POPs, you can just hover over that and check the upkeep section. When you're in a pickle for a resource, you can open the market tab. The market will allow you to buy and sell resources for energy credits. As soon as you do, the market prices shift and then slowly return to the normal base prices. So it's better to buy in bulk once when you feel the market is at a good price and then let it settle rather than click plus 100 10 times for instance, as each click will raise the cost of the next one. The final topic is trade. We mentioned that trade can be generated on planets, but it can also be found in deposits in space. You cannot mine it, however. Instead, you just need to build a starbase and outfit it with a trade hub. One single trade hub has a collection range of 1, which means all systems that are 1 hyperlane jump away will have their trade collected by this starbase. If you equip it with up to 6 trade hubs, then you guessed it, this station will collect 6 jumps away. The trade is collected instantly the connection is made. It doesn't physically travel from point A to point B, and once the trade hubs are built, a trade route is created back to your capital. But if you prefer, you can actually connect it to a different starbase to sort of map your own route and make the distances between bases shorter. This is necessary because the longer the route and the higher the trade value, the higher the risk of piracy on the route. Piracy will chip away at the trade value before it reaches your capital, and if piracy is high enough, it will spawn a military pirate fleet that you have to destroy. To combat piracy, you can build small fleets and have them patrol the route. Remember, trade value converts into energy, 1-to-1, so you only need to put a fleet on patrol if it's worth the energy upkeep of the fleet to do so. No point spending 10 energy on a fleet patrol if it's only going to save 1 energy worth of trade value. And that's basically it from a starter guide. I hope this has at least made the changes seem a little less daunting and maybe cleared up some things that definitely caught me out in my first try, such as the jobs always promoting upwards, and just concepts of refinement and jobs being attached to buildings. If you like this guide and want to see more for future Paradox games and Stellaris, then please consider leaving a like and share it with those you think may be interested. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.